is just a huge honor for me to be podcast interviewing Dr. Anikó Ball, BDSC, Diplomat Clinical Hypnosis, Advanced Diplomat in Alexander Studies. She's the founder at Optimum Dental Posture in Melbourne, Australia. Practicing general dentistry, periodontics, and dental sleep medicine, Anikó suffered frequent neck, back, and shoulder pain for decades. Doctors and physical therapists offered short-term symptom relief without identifying her condition as work-related. 11 years ago, Anikó was declared a hopeless case. She was told anti-inflammatory medication and surgery were her only options. Fortunately, she found out about the Alexander technique and received the right help to recognize her harmful work posture habits. Learned about biomechanical design and how to apply inner ergonomic principles, and she got well. 3 years later, Anikó undertook a 1,600-hour part-time course over 4 years at the Melbourne Alexander School, gaining an advanced diploma, and founded Optimum Dental Posture to save her dental colleagues from suffering occupational chronic pain. Trained in mind-body calming techniques and inner ergonomics, Anikó teaches dentists and their teams around Australia and New Zealand how to reduce occupational chronic pain and stress. Her vision is the integration of inner ergonomics and wellness in dentistry, trained in the undergraduate curriculum of dental schools. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I will be 57 next month, and a lot of us older guys are paying a huge price. Like, my neck is trashed because my big 10-pound bald bowling ball head, I just leaned over and was looking direct. And you're right now, podcasters are young. So a quarter of the people listening to you right now are still in dental school. The rest are all under 30. What could you say to them so they don't end up like me at 57 and you, where we trashed our bodies trying to do dentistry?
Well, first of all, I am delighted to be talking with you, and thank you for the invitation. What I need to say, and I have a lot to say that will help young and middle and older dentists, but something that you may not be aware of, Howard, is that the young dentists are in more trouble than our generation. When I started teaching Optimum Dental Posture training programs, I expected my generation to be flocking to my courses. And what I'm finding is that young dentists who are barely out of dental school are mostly the participants in my workshops, and they are in more pain than you and I have ever been. And I will talk about why this is happening. Does that surprise you?
Well, I never thought about it until you said that, because I guess, you just think of your own personal framework. But yeah, I see with kids a lot of times we were out playing in the park and on the farm and exploring, and they're basically just sitting there looking at their phone. So I would imagine with the cell phone revolution that they get a lot less physical movement.
Well, that is one big part, but also the way they look at their cell phones and mobile devices. They take their head to the device, and the spine wasn't designed for that. So that's one of the reasons, I believe, and they're just not so active these days. They often live in virtual reality instead of being out there kicking a ball or doing something. But also, and this has been a very big surprise and disappointment to me, is that as most dentists these days wear magnification loupes, and the young dental students begin to use them already in first, second, and third year dental school, I'm finding that the declination angle of these loupes is insufficient, which forces young students and dentists to bend their neck in ways that the neck wasn't designed for. Are you aware of this problem? This is something I only realized in the last 2 years. And this is huge.
Yeah, the angle. I know that when you get loupes, you should have someone come out and custom take the measurements and try to avoid all that stuff. But I know a friend of mine right here in Phoenix, he had to go to a microscope because he could no longer bend his head. He has to look at it like almost like a submarine periscope. He can set up straight and look straight ahead, and the microscope, which he can adjust from 1x to 8x looking down. And then I have another buddy in town who set up a video equipment, just like my podcast studio, where he has a screen on the wall So the video looks, so he's operating looking at the big screen because he has back problems and all that stuff. So what do you think of all the old guys that are in their 50s and 60s and 70s who went and had surgeries? They had their many of their spinal, cervical vertebrae fused together because of dentistry.
Well, this shouldn't have been happening. First of all, we should be learning in dental school how to get our pair of eyes and hands over to the patient without twisting our bodies into a pretzel. And something, again, that most people don't know, and I certainly work that way. That's why I was in pain for decades. Already as a dental student, I was suffering because most right-handed dentists will twist over to the right and bend their spine, and especially their cervical spine. And of course, we do terrible things with the shoulders, and we can talk about that later. So my recommendation is that as early as possible we should be learning what not to do, and what is required is very simple knowledge of biomechanical design principles, and I call this Inner Ergonomics 101. It's not rocket science. We should know where our very important joints are and which joints are designed for bending and which are not. So coming back to your question about older dentists who already had spinal surgery, for them it's more important than ever to look after their restored spine and do all the right things, both in dentistry and away from dentistry. Because what I see, Howard, is that dentists are doing damage in the clinic and also outside the clinic with various habits. Whatever we do, we tend to do it without thinking about ourselves. And my most important message is you are your most precious instrument. I see dentists taking better care of their cars and their handpieces than themselves.
Yeah, I mean, don't even get me started on that. When you don't spend your own money on it, you don't have any incentive in the game. I mean, when you look at dentists as when they're employees and they go to seminars, they just sit there on their iPhone all day. When they own the dental practice, that they take notes, and it's sad that humans own their own house, own their own car, and get totally involved in it, but then they turn their health care over to other people, and they don't actively get involved and own it. The incentives are messed up in medicine,
Absolutely.
And then you go to these people with all the 20 richest countries like your country of Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, and the United States, and their healthcare costs are exploding. You say, well, why if you just had a 5% copayment? They get less surgery. I mean, you walk into an 80-year-old man and say, your knee's got arthritis, you need a $50,000 knee replacement. They go, well, you're the doctor. But if you said, but you have to have a 10% copayment, you got to pay $5,000 of that $50,000. Well, how many old men would say, yeah, forget that, I'm not paying $5,000 that, and walk out of there? And then other people think, well, that's abusive, he should have had it free. Well, there's no pushback. You know, there's no him saying, well, maybe if I lost weight, or maybe if I quit smoking, or maybe I should join a gym. I mean, I got to pay 10% of this $50,000 hip replacement, knee replacement. You know what I mean? So they don't have any economic incentive. But so now you think these younger dentists are going to have it worse than we did?
They already do. Whenever I run workshops, or I often present to hundreds of dentists, and often large percentages young, I always ask for a show of hands who is having pain, discomfort, tingling, whatever symptoms in various body parts, and you would be shocked to see what happens. Almost there's not a single dentist whose hands don't go up many times. I've also been in Melbourne Dental School teaching oral health therapy students who are only in dental student clinic, and all of them, 100% out of 50, put their hand up for 4 different pain locations. So this is typically what I'm finding among young dentists. And not just mild pain, severe pain. And I'd like to just come back briefly to your question about loops. It is not enough to be measured up. First of all, dentists should never buy loops online or at dental expos because you should be measured up in your practice. However, what I'm finding, to my great disappointment, is that the people who come out to measure you have no idea about biomechanical design, and they set up, even though they'll measure your interpupillary distance, they seem to set up the declination angle as if you were working in front of you and not down where the patient's mouth is. So what most people don't understand, and manufacturers certainly don't, is that unless you're using a periscope type arrangement, for example, microscope, or there is now type of loop called Pentax made by Hoya, which is like an upside down periscope, but it's a loop. Unless you're using one of those, you cannot sit upright and hope to look into your patient's mouth without damaging your neck. Anyone who is using regular loops should be pivoting forward at their hip joint without twisting and bending the spine, and then look down from the top of the spine, which is just at the height of the ear. So if you imagined that there was an imaginary rod between your ears, that's where the head can actually look down from the top of the spine, and there's only a 10-degree freedom to look down. Beyond that, you're damaging your cervical spine, and the declination angle that's required is about 45 degrees, and most loops do not have that. I have not yet seen fixed loops that understand that that is the amount they need to provide. And of course, dentists that would have the right amount of declination angle, if they're sitting upright, they can't possibly look after themselves.
Well, that
so I'm
was
very
going to be
keen to get this.
I notice a lot of times if you say the word ergonomic to dentists, a lot of them say, "Oh yeah, I got the chair." Like yes. Basically, if they buy if they buy something, a chair, they can check that category off. So what? Try to explain to this dentist listening to you who thinks, "Oh, I don't have a posture problem. You're talking about somebody else, and they don't. It's right now it's above their comprehension. How could you paint a picture so this young dentist listening to you knows if that's them or not?"
Well, yes, that's a very good question, and I'll start with my own story. After having decades of pain, I asked my local dental association to send out somebody who could advise me about ergonomics, and someone came out from work health and safety and looked at the bench height and my dental chair, didn't actually look at what I was doing, and I was twisting myself into a pretzel. And years later, when I started training in the Alexander technique and looking at what I was doing inside myself, I realized that all the research and development in dental ergonomics has been about the outer, about the dental chair, the stool, the instruments, which are all very important. And by the way, and we can talk about this separately, a lot of what is supposedly ergonomically designed outer, I call all this outer ergonomics, is not ergonomically designed and not respecting biomechanical design. And then I separated what we're doing inside ourselves, and that is the dentist's efficiency in posture and movement, is the inner ergonomics. And that is just as important as the outer ergonomics. So the way you sit, how you hold certain instruments, the way you bend over the patient, what you're doing inside yourself is very important, and it's been completely overlooked. And what I spend all my time in is teaching dentists how to organize themselves from the inside out so that they're not damaging themselves. And of course, there are times where there's an outer and inner ergonomic interface, such as the magnification loops or the dental stool, that I investigate, because no matter how well you've learned to sit and pivot at the hip joint and look into the patient's mouth, if the declination angle is not right of your magnification loops, or the dental stool is truly hopeless, and many are, then you can't look after yourself. But my focus is on the inner ergonomics.
So on your website, what could my dentist homies find if they went to Optimum dentalposture.com. I assume it's just a picture of me sitting in my dental chair perfectly.
At this point on my website, people will find some information about Optimum Dental Posture and the various programs that are available. At this point, I haven't put all my postings on my website, which I will do. The best way dentists can educate themselves on what will make a difference is if they look me up on Facebook, and both on my name and also on their Optimum Dental Posture Facebook page, I have a lot of postings with tips and advice and techniques. I do post on LinkedIn. However, LinkedIn is now limiting the word count on any posting, and at times I give up because I need to cut out too much.
When did they do that?
Oh, in the last 2 years.
That Microsoft bought them. And as an American, I'm when I see Bill Gates out there and he's going around the world trying to get rid of these, and everybody's like, oh, he's a new Gandhi. Yeah, this is the guy that during my entire business career for 30 years, every time they release software, just filled with bugs, filled with errors, filled with everything. Usually you'd give Microsoft $200 or $300 for software, then have to pay someone $3,000 just to patch this stuff together. So, when Microsoft buys a company, the world gets another Chrysler. They're not going to get a Mercedes-Benz. They're not going to get a Lexus. They're going to so when they bought LinkedIn, the first thing I thought was, oh God, now they're just going to, and now you're saying they limited the word count.
Absolutely. I used to post lots on LinkedIn. Now, a lot of the time I don't bother because it's not even a word count. It's character count. So it's ridiculous.
So why do some countries like Germany and Japan just want to build an excellent product, and America is just known for, man, if she'll buy it at that price, just sell it to her. It doesn't have to work right. I mean, where does that come from?
You're talking about dentistry?
Yeah. I mean, you were talking about Microsoft buying LinkedIn. It's just embarrassing. But anyway, we'll go back to. I think if you want to, here's my thoughts on LinkedIn. Is that the dentist are on Dental Town, Facebook, whatever. But if you're in the business of dentistry, if you're the manufacturers, if you're the whole rest of the value chain, the dental manufacturers, the dental insurance, anybody who's not in clinical dentistry, the dry hands are on LinkedIn. And I appreciate the 40,000 dentists who follow me on LinkedIn. It's a very unique crowd than the dentists we have on Dental Town. But let's go back to these young kids. Do you think when are they first in pain? I mean, is pain the first time they realize that something's wrong? Does it take pain?
Well, a lot of dental students write to me. So I receive emails and Facebook Messenger contact from dentists and dental students all over the world, especially from Australia, of course. And many of them already in second and third year, as soon as they start using loupes, and there's a company selling loupes at ridiculous discount, 40% discount, and of course the students buy it. It's irresistible, and the declination angle is completely wrong. It's fixed through the lens, so it can't even be adjusted, and they're in pain. Unfortunately, by the time people feel pain, trauma has been happening for some time. This is called cumulative trauma. Every time we are twisting our bodies repeatedly or holding postures that we're not designed to hold, then damage is happening at a cellular level and it accumulates. So by the time you feel it, it's been accumulating for some time. And so pain and stiffness are warning signs, but it's already been happening. So my aim is, go on.
No, so you basically, what you're saying is that the loop has to be adjustable from the glass. It cannot be fixed to the glass.
Well, it could be if manufacturers and the reps who fit them understood what is required. Otherwise, I recommend these days to buy adjustables, provided the loops have got enough adjustability, because some adjustable loops don't have enough adjustability. Some have a nose piece that sits right above your nose, and if you don't have a small nose or there's some irregularity on your nose, it will be limited in the adjustment, and I've seen this. And unfortunately, even dentists who have adjustable loops don't actually know how to adjust it. So when dentists come into my programs, the first thing I do is I adjust it for them. And would you believe, and this is absolutely crazy, that the companies who make adjustable loops provide the dentist with such a shallow case that even once it's adjusted, in order to fit it back into the case, they take it out of adjustment. So I'm talking to all the different dental companies companies that make loops, and explain to them that they need to improve their products, improve their case. I'm calling all the companies that I get a chance to communicate with accountable. They haven't been looking after dentists as well as they should have.
So what's the list of those companies? There's who would you say the big loops are? Oroscoptic.
Oroscoptic, I've been trying to educate in Australia. They have no idea what is required. It's fine if you are a surgeon operating on an operating table, or you're a jeweler or a dental technician and your work is in front of you at your desk height, but it's not suitable for dentists. Oroscoptic has been making fixed loops at insufficient declination angle settings. And I've had a number of conversations with Australian oroscoptics, and I'm hoping they make changes. At the moment, they can't provide sufficient angle. I'm finding that Heine understands biomechanical design principles.
Who does?
Heine, H-E-N-E, H-E-I-N-E, Heine. It's a German company, distributes through Ivoclar in Australia.
Okay. So Heine dental loops through...
Yes. These are adjustable, and they have a good amount of adjustability. I have tested it, and you can definitely get the correct declination angle.
Now, the first one you said, oroscoptic, do they sell adjustable, or is it all fixed?
As far as I know, I've only seen fixed, and at this point, I don't recommend their fixed loops.
Okay. And let's see these Heine dental adjustable loops. There they are. And who would have guessed a superior made product was from Germany? That just really, really surprises me. Heim Dermatology, very.
And by the way, Howard, I'd just like to say that I'm not associated or involved with any dental company. I fiercely protect my independence so that I can critique everything from a perspective of inner ergonomics, what's truly good for dentists.
Well, good. It's amazing. The one thing I've noticed the most in my short time on Earth is how much trust is gone. I mean, it's just amazing how many people. I mean, you tell them anything and they don't trust sources. I mean, so it's great to see people that are still focused on the need for trust. Another one you didn't mention was Surgitel.
Surgitel is the company that has got this nose piece. I thought initially that Surgitel and Heine had the same amount of adjustability, but the design of Surgitel is such that that nose piece, which sits right above your nose and is part of the adjustability design, won't work for certain people who have got unusual shaped noses or larger noses.
So that was with Surgitel.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, Oroscoptic, that got bought by Kerr, and that got bought by Danaher, and they're spinning off their dental division this month. And so it's always not a really great sign when the parent company wants to spin you off because they want to focus on someone else. But Surgitel, that's still ran by the founding father. Have you talked to him?
I've only talked to the Australian manager, and I very honestly give feedback. My interest is to improve the company's abilities. I offered, for example, orthoscopic free training to all their reps just so they understand what they need to do. I am happy to give feedback to any company.
And did they take you up on that?
Well, orthoscopy didn't for about 2 years. The new Australian manager has had a conversation with me. I'm not sure what it will take to make changes.
Okay, well, I just sent you an email to the owner of Surgitel. I can't. I mean, that guy. He's more obsessed with. I mean, he's so into this. I can't imagine him not wanting to learn all about it from you. So I'll just send you an email with him.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so we talked about orthoscopic, Surgitel, Hein, Optichenek, and in Germany. Any other ones?
So I have yet to investigate Zeiss adjustable loops. However, recently I was in Tasmania training a dental team. I go out to practices and train teams, and several of the dentists had the adjustable Zeiss loops, and I was quite impressed with the adjustability.
I have some dentist friends like Craig Steichen in Albuquerque, who is a just an amazing hunter, and I didn't know what to get him for his birthday one time, so I bought him the Zeiss binoculars, and it just blew him away. I mean, he can't believe that they were that good. I mean, it's just amazing. But so what has the company of Zeiss, have they been accessible and available to you too?
Well, they approached me last year and wanted to meet with me, and they had big plans, and then nothing happened. This has happened. This is something that's happened many times, that companies are very keen to get my input, and I'm so happy to do that. I don't charge for my time. It's my pleasure to make a difference to any product that helps dentists, and quite often nothing happens.
Yeah. So and does that make you feel bad, or how do you deal with that?
I have a very good attitude, Howard. I just think that sooner or later something will come of it. I think of sowing seeds, and I keep spreading my message, and companies get in touch with me, and eventually they'll call me back again.
Yeah, so Carl Zeiss, have a lot where I've had the best luck is just seeing them in their own environment. I mean, that's when you go see those companies, you get to see, like when you walk in there, is it clean, or is it available? Do they just what does it look like? And I've just done that like my dad did with us, but I've taken my boys to probably every major dental company. Like when we went to Melbourne, where you live, you have the largest, biggest international dental company, SDI. And so I went over to SDI. I said, who's this SDI? And the guy didn't know me from Adam. His name was Cheatham. He invited me in. He showed me the whole facility with, I think I had 2 or 3 of my boys. And at the time, his daughter was about my age, and she was in the workings now. Samantha is the CEO of that company. She's podcast 1181. But when you walk into the facility, like here's what I learned about American companies. When you walked into a German or a Japanese company, they had 10 guys in lab coats, and they were PhDs, but they didn't have a marketing department. They didn't have a telemarketing, no outbound sales, no graphic, just R&D. That with the belief that if you make it good, it'll sell. Then you go to American companies that do $100 million a year, not one PhD. And then you walk in a room and there's like 30 people telemarketing, dialing for dollars. And they have a goal and a thermostat, and they're trying to do this, and there's rah, and it's like Americans can sell anything. And then you go to China, and their whole deal is, We will make this so cheap, you'll just buy it because it's so cheap. And a lot of times it's too cheap. I just think the world needs to look at what China's doing and try to make things lower price. They need to look at what Germany and Japan do and make them higher in quality. And they need to look at America just on marketing and advertising. And if you blended the three of those strategies together, you'd really have something. But Americans are, but like Zeiss in Germany, I mean, some of these German dental factories I've seen are just, I mean, you just don't see anything like that in the United States. But have you gone down to SDI in your own backyard there and met with Samantha Cheatham?
No, I haven't. What I tend to do is I'm usually a presenter at dental congresses, and outside my presentation and teaching time, I walk around and meet all the displays of companies and booths, and talk to all the people who are making anything that's relevant to dental ergonomics. So I don't look at materials as such, but I look at the way instruments are designed. I look at all the loops. I look at dental stools. I investigate everything. Quite often, these companies send me products to test out, and I send it back and I give them feedback. So I don't have the ability to travel everywhere at the moment, although I am invited and travel quite a lot interstate and overseas.
So we talked a lot about loops. We talked about Orthoscoptic, Surgitel, Zeiss, Hein. But is the chair, what do you think is the bigger factor? The chair you're sitting in or the loops? And what would be next after loops?
Well, but before we leave loops, I just want to specify that unless you're using an operating microscope or a Pentex type loop, you cannot sit upright. And this is a huge myth that dentists don't understand, is that you have to be pivoting your torso slightly forward and then look down. And we can come back to that later. Now, what you sit on makes a very big difference. And when answering partly the question about American and German and Japan and the way that dental products or any product is designed, I'm finding that American and Australian companies design according to what they think will sell, and plush, soft, they think will sell, which is really bad for you. Whereas in Germany and Japan, the companies are more willing to make a firm stool, which is much better for you. So what you need to look for in a dental stool is that it should be firm, because unless you're sitting on a firm seat, and you should be sitting on your sit bones, unless you get this firm feedback against your sit bones, which activates your deep postural anti-gravity muscular support system, you're just sinking into it, and you tend to roll off your sit bones, and then of course your spine is being damaged. So the first thing is it should be firm. The next part, it should be, you should be able to create a slight forward tilt. Many dental stools don't have that. The reason is that your hip joint should be a little bit higher than your knees, and it's much easier to pivot forward and look into a patient's mouth when you're sitting on a slightly forward sloping surface, and that shouldn't be more than about 8 degrees. And the trouble is that a few dental stools that I've seen that can tip forward are slippery, so you feel like you're slipping off. So it should be a non-slip, a grippy surface. So these are the 3 points. Plus, the backrest should be upright. You shouldn't be leaning back against a backrest when you're working, unless you're able to sit upright with a microscope or a special type of loop. But when you're talking to the patient, you should be supported in the upright, because what happens is most backrests are backward sloping, and then of course you come off your sit bones, and then you're reversing your lumbar curve. So, and of course the guest lift, the height of the chair, should be fully adjustable to your height. So these are the criteria that I look for. And in the dental chair itself for the patient, there are some very important criteria. It should be very thin. The back should have, you should be able to slide your knees underneath. and also the headrest should not have any mechanism that gets in the way of you being able to slide your knees underneath. So that's also important.
So the most important things would be the loops, the chair you're sitting on, the stool, and then the chair that the patient's in?
Very much. Now, these are outer ergonomics. And also the
These are what?
foot control, this is what I call the outer ergonomics.
Outer.
So I've divided ergonomics into outer, which is everything in your surgery but you. And they have to be well designed. The surgery layout has to be right. And by the way, while we're at it, the space behind the dental chair, when the dental chair is fully supine, horizontal, the space between the back wall or the cabinetry and the edge of the headrest is a critical measurement that's usually overlooked. It should be a minimum 70 centimeters, ideally even 80, because if the dentist up to 90, because if the dentist can't slide the stool backwards enough when the patient is lying back in a horizontal position, then the only way the dentist can look into the patient's mouth is bending the spine. So these are critical outer ergonomic aspects. What I teach is inner ergonomics, what you're doing inside yourself, how you bend, what to do and not to do with your spine, with your shoulders, with your legs, with your hands. And I have a lot to say about that if we have time.
We do have time. So you don't teach the outer ergonomics. That was the outer. Yeah, the outer ergonomics was mainly loops. What you call the dentist that sits on a stool? Is that what you call it? Is that the common word? Loop, stool.
The dental stool, the patient chair, the delivery system, whether it's a side delivery or continental, the surgery layout, cabinetry, the space around the dental chair, also the foot control. It's better to have a foot control that's an up and down activation because the knee and the ankle are hinge joints. Although the ankle can twist, it's better not to sit and activate the drill with a twisted ankle, and the profile shouldn't be too high. Now, I do teach this in my programs because I want to educate dentists on what to buy and what not to buy.
Well, yeah, one last thing. What about the light? I noticed the biggest irritating thing to me is the light, the overhead. I got a track on a pole. A lot of my friends now are going to a headlight on the head. Any thoughts on lights?
Absolutely. A headlight is a must.
Okay.
It's like...
I'm gonna buy one. I'm finally gonna go do it. Which one do you recommend?
I haven't looked at the latest range because I've been so busy looking at magnification loops. But my recommendation is that it shouldn't be too heavy. Go for the natural color rather than the blue. There are some that have got a bluish coloration, a blue light. It's better for your eyes, and also you can see gingival coloring much better, and for cosmetic dentistry. So I'd look for a warm color, but I don't have a particular recommendation. However, the light makes such a difference because what I realized, I got headlight years ago, and what I realized was that I spent about a quarter, if not more, of my time in my appointments fiddling with the light, trying to get it to where I needed it. The second it's attached to your glasses or loops, wherever your eyes are, that's where the light is. It's amazing. It's a game changer.
Say that last part again.
It's
the last
having
sentence.
A headlight is a game changer.
Yeah.
Do you use that expression in America?
Yeah, game changer. So that was all the outer ergonomics, but you like to focus on the inner ergonomics. So talk about inner ergonomics. What does that mean?
So what that means is that Let me take a step back because this will make sense to you. When you learn to drive your car, you learned about road rules and you learned about gears. Would that be right?
Yes.
And you learn that if you're driving 100 kilometers or miles an hour, you're in a high gear, and if you're going up a steep hill, you're in a low gear. That is cooperating with the car's mechanical design. And you don't have to be a mechanical engineer to know this. And also you learn that you got to give way certain road rules. The body has got biomechanical design principles, which we don't know. We think that we can do anything with our body that our flexibility allows. Unfortunately, that is correct if you're in movement. If I'm dancing, I can twist and do anything. The problem is that when we hold a particular position as a posture, and in dentistry we do that for lengthy period, that's when knowing what your body was and wasn't designed for is essential. So for example, knowing that below the height of your ears, all your spinal joints are gliding joints. What that means is that they're not designed for twisting and bending, even though you can twist and bend, because you've got this between your vertebra that will allow you to squash and distort them. But if you don't come back to neutral very quickly, and in dentistry we hold a particular twisted position for really long periods, like half an hour or longer, and we barely move a lot of the time, this between the vertebra don't get a chance to recover and rebound, and that's when we do damage. So that's one aspect. So knowing that you can't hold twisted postures, and all dentists do that, as well as their dental assistants, is one part. So I teach people how to look into the patient's mouth using the correct joints. That's like driving in the right gear. The reason why I was in pain for so many decades of my practicing life as a dentist was because I was driving my body in the wrong gear. So I teach people the road rules and the right gears, meaning which joints to use for the right job, is part of what I teach. The other is that you have got different types of muscles, and the muscles that move the arm, for example, are movement muscles, and they're not designed to hold up. The average arm is about 4 kilos. They're not designed to hold up your shoulder and your elbow in the air for lengthy periods. So for example, a right-handed dentist with the mouth mirror in the left hand have a tendency to twist over to the right, damaging their spine, and then they have their left shoulder, elbow, and hand up in the air. And movement muscles of the arm are not designed to be contracting for lengthy periods. So most dentists have got, and hygienists, have chronic pain in their left shoulder. Would that be right? Do you know, have you had that problem?
That was going to be my next question. She's driving to work. She's, they're all alone and they're in the car. What are the most likely dental occupation injuries? What do you see them at? What's the cluster?
So the cluster is neck, back, and shoulder. They are the highest incidence of chronic pain.
And how neck, back, and shoulder, and how many of them do you think eventually become disabled because of this? Have you talked with any disability people? Is this do you know what percent of dentists eventually become disabled and collect disability because their injuries are so high?
No, I haven't looked into that. What I do ask all dentists who attend my programs, I ask if they've had to cut back already their sessions at their practices. Are they considering early retirement? And you wouldn't believe how many young dentists are already thinking of retraining in another field, not because they don't love their work, but because they are in too much pain. Many have already cut back.
Wow, that's sad. It's sad.
Very sad.
But I want to ask you, to the older people like me who 20, 30 years ago, you never know how much is fad and how much is going to stick. It was a carpal tunnel. and everybody was having carpal tunnel surgery, and you know that's the American deal. They find a problem and they find a surgery and they say start doing it. And a lot of my friends would always say, well, you know, if Jim would have just done like maybe 5 push-ups every month, you know, put his hands flat against the floor and did some push-ups, maybe he shouldn't have had that surgery done. That was a long time ago, but looking back now that we've known about carpal tunnel forever, do you think do you think dentists could have avoided a lot of that with more exercise, or what's your thoughts on carpal tunnel?
So what I teach, and even in my short presentations, I talk about the fact that hands are our livelihood. And what I see is that dentists are, this is for everyone, but I'll talk specifically about dentists. Even when we're not doing dentistry, there's a tendency to have the fingers contracted. For example, most dentists, when they're sitting and listening to a lecture, they are either holding something in their hand or they've got their hands curved. And I train dentists to extend their hand, meaning I'll just hold my hand up. So doing that whenever they can. So for example, if they are working in the practice and they're waiting for a material to set, or the nurse is preparing something, to put their instruments down and do a full extension with the gloves on and not touching anything, so that they're not contracting their fingers. If you're not doing dentistry and you're not grasping and doing something with your hands, then extend. So when you're driving and you get to a red light or a railway crossing, do a full extension on the steering wheel. When you are walking around at a party, don't keep holding your mobile phone keys and an empty glass in your hand. Put things down. So I train people to watch their gripping habits and extending the hands, because the tendons of what people don't realize is that the carpal tunnel is a very narrow tunnel, and when our hand is in contraction, this often people think this is a relaxed position for the hand in their lap, and that's still a contraction. So you want to extend as much as possible. I believe that it can be carpal tunnel surgery can be avoided. And the other one is mobile phone use. I just want to say this. Do you know that a lot of young people are scrolling with their thumb when they are texting and scrolling? They're using their thumb. I've already seen a number of young dentists who have thumb injuries and chronic pain. And I tell people, don't use your thumbs for scrolling and texting. The thumb is not a finger. Use your fingers.
Wow, I have not heard of that one. But it's funny because when you go to government websites and say occupational hazards to dentistry, they say infectious hazards. Number one, infectious hazards, needles and other sharp objects, psychological hazards from dealing with stations, allergic reactions from the gloves containing latex. Then physical hazards, these include musculoskeletal complications, which have direct relation to dental procedures, like postural situations that may increase the risk of twisting and contorting the body. And then it says mercury health hazard, ionizing radiation, non-ionizing radiation, and anesthetic gases. My God, would you say dentist, the occupation of a dentistry relative to all the other occupations, you think we're in the middle, more hazardous, less hazardous? Actually, you probably don't even know what hazard is because you live in the continent that has 7 of the 10 deadliest snakes. So you guys probably your whole life are just expecting to get bit by a snake any second. Do you think dentistry is a hazardous job?
Oh, very much so. I knew already as a fourth-year dental student that I was about to graduate into a very stressful profession, and that's why I trained in hypnosis and mind-body relaxation techniques, and I teach dentists in my courses how to look after themselves and deal with time pressure, relax themselves and their patients, because that's a big problem. And of course, occupational chronic pain, twisting and bending is a huge hazard. So both of them need to be addressed. And I've seen a lot of studies done on dentists, and I believe that we're among the highest risk and high suicide rate, burnout rate, stress rate.
Yeah.
All of which can be helped.
All of which can be helped. Yeah, and you know, and you see that like when you're working on someone and you all of a sudden you feel your chest tightening and it's like I'm totally relaxed and
Yes.
fine, but I know that I'm reacting to this person, and so I'm in tune with that. So I always take a deal and say, okay, relax your hands, relax your back, you know, try to get them relaxed. But it's funny how I feel it on me as it's happening to them. So it has to be an extremely psychological. I believe we're some type of a social herd animal, that, you know, like bees and ants and, you know, many of these animals. And I think 1,000 years from now they'll understand a lot more than they do now. But I definitely think we're social in the fact that if someone comes in your office afraid, then you're going to feel the fear and the anxiety.
Oh, absolutely. And something that I teach to all the dentists that I actually taught myself as a young dentist is not to take it personally, because what happens is that often patients come in very scared and they cover up the fear with some sort of prickly, somewhat hostile exterior. And if we don't understand that underneath it is a very frightened person who is almost regressing to a child, we take it personally, and then we go on the defensive, and it's not a great thing. So the way I look at it is that when you go out into the rain, you get wet, but the rain doesn't come at you personally. You just get wet. And so not to take it personally when a patient is difficult or prickly, and to see past that outer and call on your compassion and understand that this is just a frightened human being, and then apply relaxation techniques, even just dropping the voice tone, talking very slowly, taking an audible breath next to the patient. These are very subtle techniques that are very powerful, already makes a difference.
Yeah, and you know, I have no excuses because my dad told me this years ago. He owned. Do they have Sonic? They don't have Sonic drive-ins in Australia, do they? Sonic drive-ins where you pull up in a car and you. They don't have those, do they?
Drive-in movies, yes, we
No
do.
drive-in
We
movies.
have less these days.
Yeah, but anyway, my dad owned a restaurant, and when I told him I wanted to be a dentist, like my next door neighbor, he said, "But you know, when you're in a restaurant, you get to see the best side of people. When they go out to eat
Yes.
and go to McDonald's, that's the best they're ever going to be. But if you become a policeman or a dentist." Or in those jobs where you see people at their worst. And it's just tough because you're right. I mean, we see people at their worst. And if you worked at Disney, I mean, I remember when I took my kids to Disneyland one time, the kid in front of me actually was so excited he actually messed up his pants. And I thought, man, this is a different world than dentistry. I mean, no one's ever jumped up and down and soiled their pants waiting for me to open my doors at 7 a.m. It's tough. So what would the message be now? What do you want my homies to take away? Should they go to your website? Would that be the first start if they go to optimumdentalposture.com?
Well, those of your audience who are not in Australia or New Zealand and can't get to Australia easily, my website is not the most informative place at the moment. If they get on my Facebook page, Optimum Dental Posture Facebook page, or under my name, Anikó Ball profile page, and they scroll back up to last year, they will find a lot of useful information where I post about a particular aspect of the way we practice dentistry and give very important advice and recommendations. That would be the first step. Of course, I'm willing to come to America and Europe and train dentists and present at dental congresses. That's a very good way to meet me and interact with me. Come to Australia and attend my 2-day ergonomics and wellness in dentistry workshop. That's the best way to learn, because I teach the inner ergonomic principles, and then we apply all that you learn around dental chairs over a mannequin in simulated dentistry and get lots and lots of individual training and practice. So I'm open to training people.
I got another question. When I graduated from high school in 1980, so from 76 to 80, any kid in Bishop Carroll who had a dad that was a dentist, I mean, Dr. Prepard, Dr. Peltzer, Dr. Knudsen, I was always like, will your dad let me and John Lease go spend the day in your office? Because John Lease was my friend that we went from 7th grade to the end of dental school together. And we used to go to these offices, and John and I would always talk because Dr. Prepard, he was a stand-up dentist, and the other ones were sitting down. Now, the oral surgeons, they all stood, but I'm talking about a general dentist. So the oral surgeons all stood. Everybody else sat down except for Dr. Prepard or Dr. Peltzer, I'm sorry. And so looking back, was standing up healthier? Was that a better strategy than sitting in a chair? And how do you compare what's happening with oral surgeons who all the oral surgeons I know are standing when they do surgery? So what's the difference between stand up and sit down?
Very good question. So there are many ways of standing that are just as bad as sitting. The only good thing is that they move, whereas dentists tend to be more stationary when they sit. However, it's essential to learn how to stand well. So on day 2 of my 2-day program, I teach people how to stand and bend over the dental chair, whether you're a surgeon or just a general dentist doing extraction. And I teach dentists how to bend from the hip and balance the weight that's in front and behind them, because gravity acts on you vertically. I get people to bring in Forceps, and I teach how to stand and do extractions using your whole body wisely and not loading your arm. Yes, so there is a know-how. Inner ergonomics comes into standing as well. But in the old days, when dentists were standing, at least they were moving. I've had ear, nose, and throat specialists attending my programs, and I've gone out to operating theaters and trained them how to bend over the patient in the operating theater. And there are just as many bad, harmful posture habits as there are in sitting.
And how, is dental ergonomics, is that include stress management and stretching, or is it separate, or which is the eve of is ergonomics based to stretch, exercising? How are they related?
So moving, stretching is really good. Whether you call it ergonomics or not, we're designed to move. I don't know if you've heard there was research done in Australia, in Melbourne actually, and they said sitting is the new smoking. We're not designed to sit for more than 35-45 minutes, so it's great to move and stretch. Unfortunately, a lot of people do harmful exercises at the gym, and some personal trainers don't know what people should be doing with themselves. So I've met dentists who did a lot of damage working out in gyms. With the right know-how, knowing which joints are designed to bend and which are not, and how to pick up a heavy weight and work out. Working out in a gym can be very good. Yoga can be very good, provided the yoga teacher understands that you're not meant to bend down with straight legs, locked knees, and middle of the spine bending. So again, you want to know about biomechanical design principles. Walking is fantastic. Moving is very good. And while we're talking about health, I just want to bring in eye health. With the use of LEDs and microscopes and high magnification loops, it's very important to look after our eye health. So it's important to take off glasses, loops, and look out into natural light, look distant, look into the distance, and also use your peripheral vision. Otherwise, we'll have eye problems as well in future.
Eye problems?
Yes.
That's one I wasn't going to be thinking about. Eye problems from what?
The fact the eye, just like we weren't designed to sit for lengthy periods, we're designed to move. The eyes were designed to look into the distance, look around what's around you, danger, in primitive days, we were forever scanning as to what's around. Now in dentistry, we're looking down along a very narrow focus, and that is a tendency to not use all the relevant eye muscles, and it's just not great for the eyes to be so narrowly focused for lengthy periods. I've seen dentists who don't take off their magnification loupes and go out to the waiting room greeting their patients with loupes on. Take them off. You look around, look near and far. I've spent some time with people who are trained in natural vision improvement.
Do you think any countries or regions, you're out there next to New Zealand, Australia, Japan, the whole, do you think any countries are better at ergonomics than others, or do you think they all have the same problem, or are some people more focused on it?
Well, a lot of it is hearsay, but what I have heard is that in the past, Japanese designers of dental equipment were more aware of good ergonomics, and dentists in Japan were more willing to buy well-designed equipment. And that was something that was in the past. I'm not sure if that is still the case. I don't have figures to compare as to where people are more aware of ergonomics. What I've found, Howard, is that the inner ergonomics, what you're doing inside yourself, is foreign to just about every dentist that I've come across. And so I would say that there's probably better outer ergonomics, better design equipment in perhaps some of the European countries. Certainly German, Scandinavian designs are very good, and some of the Japanese designs than perhaps America and Australia, where we're more focused on the plush, comfy kind of look instead of what's actually good for you. And while we're talking about all this, something I wanted to mention is that I am frequently asked, what position should a dentist sit in? I get lots of questions like, should I be in 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock? In America, do you have that positioning where you're behind the patient or to the side and you call it an o'clock position?
Right, absolutely.
Right. Now, looking at what position to sit in is what I call an outside-in organization, because that doesn't take into account your structure and the patient, and of course every head and patient is different and what quadrant you're working on. So what I teach is to go from the inside. So it's an inside-out perspective. I say to the dentists I train is, once you know that you're not supposed to be twisting yourself to the side, organize yourself to sit wherever you can be so that you look after yourself and you bend at the right joints. Move the patient chair, move the patient, ask the patient to turn their head. A lot of dentists don't ask their patients to turn their head. They rather twist themselves into a pretzel than ask the patient to turn to the side. So go from the inside out and say, this is the way I can look after myself so I'm not twisting and bending myself.
And all I'll say to the kids is, and you know this, the reason, the big problem is you just make bad habits, and habits are so hard to change. And you think, I'm fine, I can get away with this. But you start looking direct, and it's cheating. I get it, man.
Absolutely.
You're doing surgery, and you just want to lean over and look straight in there, and it's faster. And it's faster, so it's immediate gratification, and then you're gonna pay for it later. And my gosh,
absolutely,
you only are born with one body, and why are you trashing it for your patient?
Well, people don't actually get that. I call it a shortcut, twisting around to quickly look at the computer, twisting to pick up the hand pieces on a side delivery, or twisting around to get direct vision. These are shortcuts for which we pay a very heavy price. And of course, habit change is a big issue. And I spend a lot of time training dentists how to become aware and develop postural awareness and change habits. And in fact, this is where I find that training a dental team, where I train the dentist and the dental assistant together so that they observe each other and remind each other to break habits. You have to break over and over and over again habits for about a 30-day period before you develop a new default, an improved default. And what happens is that whatever you've been doing feels comfy and right, even though it's doing you damage, and you don't even notice that you're back to the old twist.
Now,
so it's very helpful.
Your name is Anikó Ball. Is that how you say it? Anikó Ball?
Yes.
Kyle wants to know if you're related to Anakin Skywalker.
No.
Are you familiar with Anakin Skywalker? But anyway,
from Star Wars.
It sounds Anakin. I mean, it's not Anikó. Anakin was. Did you go to school with Anakin Skywalker?
No.
No. Okay. Well, hey, Anikó. Seriously, thank you so much. My brother moved to Sydney, Australia. I go down there all the time, and I love. It's the only country that every time I go back there, I always say, "Why am I going back home?" And it's only because I got 4 kids and 5 grandkids. But if I never had children, if I had no kids, no grandchildren, whatever, Australia is the only country I would never come back to. I think Sydney, Melbourne, Perth. I mean, it's just. I actually love Perth the most. I probably Gold Coast the next. Sydney, just love it all down there. Love the people of Australia. They're just at a different level of just fun and laid back and cool. Every time I go visit my brother Paul, I'm just like, why am I come back home? But I just want to thank you. It's 5:18 p.m. here on a Monday night. What time is it there in Australia? It's 17 hours ahead. What?
So it's Tuesday morning, 10:15.
Okay, and thank you so much for waking up this morning and Skyping me all the way to 10,000 miles away and talking to all these young kids about how they need to think long-term about their posture or they're going to pay for it. So it's Anikó Ball. Her website's Optimum Dental Posture, and you're going to remember her name, Anikó, because I said Anakin Skywalker. So, and I would start doing that. Just Dr. Anikó Skywalker Ball, BDS, diplomat, clinical hypnosis, advanced diploma in the Alexander Studies. Save your posture. Do what's right. Don't waste your body. Anikó, thank you so much for coming on today. It was an honor and a privilege to podcast you.
It's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.